Action! So, in clinic the other day, a client said to me, "Oh, you give too much away on Instagram," and generally, and it got me thinking. So this is the last video that I'm ever going to do ever again, where I'm going to give some free information.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Well, we do that. There's several reasons we give stuff away. A, because I think education is important, and I think you are more compliant, you're more likely to follow your rehab, you're more likely to adhere to the program changes that we make if you understand what it is that we're trying to do. And B, I think it creates a sense of trust and loyalty. And I think trust and loyalty are two traits that are forgotten, I think, in the world these days. Certainly in the world that we work in.
It's very profound.
That is very profound. That's the last bit of profanity. That's not even the right word, is it? Profanity. Swearing. That's the last profoundness.
Profound in eternity.
So this morning I thought we'd talk a little bit about sort of following up from some of the tendon injury stuff that we've talked about. We'd talk about load management while you're recovering from your tendon injury. So if you've got pain in your elbow here, it might be your bicep, it might be the extensors of your wrist, or here, it might be the flexors of your wrist, or wherever you've got your tendon problems. I think there's this misconception. People come in and think we can fix that in one session. We'll rub the bit that hurts, stick a few needles in it, and everything will be hunky-dory. And unfortunately, because tendon injuries develop over quite a long period of time, so before you're even symptomatic, you'll tend to find that your tendon is starting to degenerate and become inflamed way before you start to get the full-blown symptoms. So we're going to spend a little bit of time, and I hate saying that because that makes it sound really formal, but we're going to talk a little bit about what you should do when you get those first feelings like you've got a tendon injury, and then a bit more about how you'd rehab that once you've got a full-blown tendon problem. So in the early days, you'll probably find when your tendon gets a bit squealy, you start to feel your training in your joints. So you're no longer feeling it in the muscle, you're feeling it around the joints area. That's a sign that you're starting to load the tendons aren't happy. You'll probably find you might ache throughout the course of the day, so you've got a little bit of a dull ache at times. It goes away when you train, you think, oh, it's getting better. Actually, you just warmed the tendon up, you just improved its load tolerance. And then as it progresses, you'll start to find it becomes a bit more than an ache. It starts to affect daily life. You take some time off, you go back to the gym, you do the same things as you've done before, and lo and behold, it's back there again. And then it gets to the point where you keep doing that, the tendon starts to degenerate and not be able to tolerate load, and it starts to affect you while you're lifting shopping bags, opening door handles, random little things like that. Now, if you stop in those early days, if you simply took a few days of deload, did some mobility work, did some specific work for your tendons, you'd probably find you'd stop that in its tracks. That's literally all it takes in the early days. This is before you're at the point where you've got daily symptoms. So load management in the early days is basically a period of rest. Offload the tendon starts to regenerate, Bob's your uncle, you're back training again, having lost a few days worth of training. Nobody does that because we all know better. We all think we can train through injuries, we all think we can work around these things and it will get better miraculously. I'll do something that really hurts my bicep, and the next day you'll think, yeah, it'll be fine, and you're in a world of pain. So when you're at that stage, once you've developed a full-blown tendinopathy, which basically means there's something wrong with the tendon, but we're not quite sure whether it's inflamed or starting to degenerate, you then have to be a bit more directed in your management. So we've done videos in the past where we've talked about isometric holds. Isometrics are a really useful thing because an isometric muscle contraction basically fatigues, if you hold it for long enough with a heavy enough weight, fatigues all of your motor units. So essentially, once they've all been fatigued, so you've recruited every single muscle, you're then starting to load the tendon. Now, isometrics have an analgesic effect, which means that it reduces pain. So one of the benefits of doing your isometric holds is that for about 45 minutes afterwards, it feels much better. Now that's usually the point where people then go, right, my tendon feels good, I'm going to go back into the gym and I'm going to do all the things that brought me to this place in the first place, because I haven't been able to train chest for a while, I haven't been able to train my arms for a while, and that's not the right thing to do. The right thing to do at that point is a careful, graded management of your load back up to the point where you're tolerating the loads that you were beforehand. So you might use things like occlusion training, you might use things which essentially means you can't use a heavy load because you're creating a load of metabolic stress. You might do things where you are taking the load, so like heavy slow resistance training, but not in terms of heavy as you were training beforehand, but heavy in terms of what your tendon can tolerate at that time. So I think that the message here is if you manage injuries in the early stages correctly, and when you start to feel those tendon, those joint sort of feelings, the muscles, you're no longer feeling it in the muscle, it's actually in the joint. If you took a deload period, you'd probably stop the tendon issues in its tracks. If you haven't done that, you're now in a stage where you're in a full-blown tendinopathy. You need some hands-on work, you need some stuff to loosen off muscles, improve joint biomechanics, and then you need a graded return to exercise. And I think the thing to remember with your graded return to exercise is just because it starts to feel better doesn't mean the tendon is regenerated. So following the protocol, because this is another problem that we face, is a lot of people start to feel a reduction in their symptoms and then they go straight back into doing what they were doing beforehand. And lo and behold, when they come back into clinic, they said it was feeling better, I started doing some more bits and pieces, and all of a sudden it's back to where we were.